So 16-bit Sensation comes from the same creator as The World God Only Knows. So if you've seen or read that, then you'll know there's a few things that stand out, such as his interest in technology, video games, primarily visual novels, detailed characters, and also it's a romantic comedy. And all of those elements, minus the romance, actually carry over to 16-bit Sensation, plus it's got a lot more, because we actually get to see some of the detailed process behind the creation of 1990s and early 2000s visual novels, and I thought that was great. Plus, when you factor in everyone's friendship with each other, it makes for this light-hearted and enjoyable experience that you can have fun with and also learn something from. And it really reminded me of some of the other anime that I enjoyed similar to this, such as Genshiken or Comic Party, where they work on a manga there, or the last episode of Golden Boy, where they make an anime and show all of the detailed process behind that. And I think it's great. Unfortunately, as good as everything sounds, it's really too good to be true, because everything that I've just described pertains, from what I can tell, it more pertains to the manga, because 16-bit Sensation is one thing, and then 16-bit Sensation, another layer, is another thing. You can call it what you want, but I'm just going to call it a bad adaptation, because it takes the elements of these characters coming together and creating a visual novel in the 1990s with all of the technology and everything, and they really go into detail about the specs of like the PC-98 and programming and the way that they did the art and the coloring and dithering and all of this stuff, which I thought was great. They do that sort of thing in the manga, and that actually transitions over to the anime very well, but it's relegated to a smaller part of the story because they needed to make it an isekai. Yes, I know it's technically not an isekai, but honestly, I don't want to hear it. So what they did was, instead of sticking with the same setting as the manga, they actually brought it forward into modern-day Japan, created an anime original protagonist. They gave her a stack of retro visual novels, and every time she opens one, they become this one-time pass to the day that they release between the late 80s and the early 2000s, and she gets to go back in time and actually work on visual novels with the main characters of the manga. Now granted, I didn't look up anything about the manga until the anime's final act, so my genuine experiences with the first half of this anime, I really enjoyed it. I felt like this could be a solid 8 out of 10 because I was having so much fun with the time that she was in the past. Plus, even as an anime original character, I didn't know this at the time, I liked her personality and I liked her story basically, because she's a talented artist who's stuck doing menial jobs, making visual novels, and visual novels are a big inspiration for her in her life. She loves them so much, but at her big company that she's working at, the only jobs that they'll give her to do is paint the backs of men. And if you've ever played any visual novels, you'll know how low tier that goes in terms of art. I also enjoyed how she was used for exposition, because when she goes back in time, she creates this verbal contrast between our modern technology and the technology that they had during the various eras that she visits. And I think this is great, especially for anime watchers who just weren't around during those time periods, that they get to learn about the technology, plus the characters within that time period, they explain the things to her, and it actually works. Because a lot of times, there's this forced exposition in stories where it's like one character tells something to another character, but the other character should already know it, so they're basically doing it for the audience's benefit. The way that they did that here, it actually worked, because she had no idea of what they were doing in that time period, because everything was so bizarre to her. So I really liked that. I also liked the aesthetic of it all. It's almost like ASMR with the beeps and boops and the hard drive sounds. There are sounds that I haven't heard for a long time, and it was really nostalgic to me. At its heart, 16-bit Sensation is a true love letter to fans of visual novels because they go above and beyond with the references. I guess they acquired the rights or the permission to do this, but they make direct references by showing true box art of real games and also using the real names. Plus, the character here, the new one from our time, because she's played all these games, she makes references to their lore and stuff, and it's just fun. Even though I'm someone who I haven't played many visual novels myself, I appreciated the dedication to this and how they went through all these references like that. So I can imagine if you're a big fan of visual novels, you'll probably like this even more than me. Unfortunately, everything I loved about 16-Bit Sensation begins changing around episode 6 because there's actually other anime original characters here who become catalysts for the story changing, and I have to be very vague about this to avoid spoilers, but by the time you hit episode 8, you'll realize it's not going back. It gets weird, and it starts taking the time travel element so seriously. And keep in mind that I didn't know anything about the differences with the manga at this point. I was just watching this, and I felt like I didn't know what I was watching. It felt like something from a different story. Maybe they changed directors or something. The type of ending that they were going for here is achievable and it could be good, but they needed a lot more. I felt like it should have been like 24 episodes in order to make the time travel elements work. But by then, the more time travel elements you add, it just dilutes the best part of the story, which is when she's back in the 90s and working on video games with these people. And that, it really lost its soul, I felt, and it really saddened me. And then when I was close to conclusion of this, I looked up the manga, and within the first page, I saw, this is a bad adaptation. If this was just an anime about people in the 90s making visual novels, I would have enjoyed it so much more, especially if it carried over that aesthetic. And it's really hard to understand the full scope of its potentials when there's only 7 chapters translated as of right now, because the characters in The World God Only Knows, they were so much more detailed. And that's really a thing about this anime, is that they focus so much on time travel that there's really only 2 detailed characters in the story here, and all of the other characters, they're basically one-note personalities, and there's a lot of other characters. It's always great when you can have a lot of characters in an anime and they're actually fleshed out, but they didn't really do that here, and there were just a lot of moments, especially relating to the actual ending, like in the last episode, that I felt like there's a lot of information that I'd like to note. There's like elements that they work towards, and then, they just don't talk about it. And it really, there's so much potential that's left on the table here. And it just makes me feel like there was some committee, they looked at the manga and they were like, yeah, we want this, but we want you to do that with it. Or maybe some director that wanted to change something in order to have greater mass appeal with the younger people watching anime, but I don't like it. And I give overall 16-Bit Sensation, Another Layer, I give this a 6.5 out of 10. There were some elements in the second half that I liked in terms of the emotional connection between the characters. I thought they did all right there. But for the most part, I feel like they really had this home run potential here, and they squandered it because, like I said, a lot of the time for the first half of the anime, I felt like this would be a solid 8 out of 10. And you know what's really interesting and ironic about this adaptation is that there are morals in the story that speak to doing things the way that you feel is right and putting your heart into your project, even if you're using outdated technology, even if you are taking a long time to do it because you've got a shoestring budget and only a couple people working on it, as opposed to having a billion man-hours and a big sea of people making something that's purely for the sake of monetary gain. So it really makes me feel like they missed the point there. But anyways, if you've seen 16-Bit Sensation, it's a fun anime. If you are interested in visual novels, especially if you're interested in it, it's worth checking out because the moments that I really liked it. And yes, it does go downhill, but I liked it when it was good. So it's a very light recommendation here, so just be cautious with this recommendation. So if you decide to check out 16-Bit Sensation, or if you've seen it, well, let me know what you think about it in the comments section below. And I also want to note that the manga is really different. That's one bit of information that I want to put out there in case somebody wants to translate it or license it, or who knows. Or even if you read Japanese, you can probably read that. I just want people to know that the manga was different. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you soon with another video.